All right, so let's talk about the ex-husband. Let's talk about the ex-husband. That is what this episode is entitled, The Ex-Husband. So I spoke briefly in the previous episode when I talked about my three children. I mentioned briefly my ex-husband. And this one is a little bit weird for me, only in the sense that just how our relationship has progressed, transformed, deteriorated too. So I met my ex-husband in high school, and I wasn't dating him at the time. We did not date in high school at all. Did he want to? Yes. But we did not date in high school at all. Because for me, I was one attracted to older guys. Always have been attracted to older guys. I had two relationships in high school, three, quite honestly, with older guys, and two of them went to the high school. One of them did not. And so even though I thought my ex-husband was a good person, I thought that he was attractive, I thought that he was fun and funny, I thought that he would make someone else a very happy person. He was good to talk to, he was good to share with, he was good to pour my heart out to. But I did not see him at that time as boyfriend material, partner material. And therefore, he was not even a consideration for me. So, we were friends in high school. Probably just the junior and senior year. I think he came into the school in the sophomore year, and that's when I was first introduced to him. But we didn't become friends until like the junior year. So we were friends through junior and senior year. He actually ended up graduating the same year as I, but later, because he was one of those that thought it was more important to be social than to be educated. So, no dig on him, but that's, we had quite a few at that time that they thought it was just better to be social than to be educated. So they were hanging out, having fun, doing what they wanted to do. And then when it came time to graduate, they didn't have the credits needed. So they had to go to summer school. He and his best friend, quite honestly, had to do that. So anyway, I went away to school, found out that I was pregnant. Came back home. Like I said, I had a relationship with another person, and it just didn't work out because it was just too much pressure on me, and then I didn't want to put the extra pressure on them. And I got back with my oldest son's father, and then that didn't last. And then I reconnected with this friend, my ex-husband. We reconnected on a friend basis after my son was born, and then decided to explore having an actual relationship with one another and becoming boyfriend and girlfriend. And I don't even know how it happened, it just did. So we developed that relationship, became boyfriend and girlfriend, and it went on for years. Like, we were together for a total of 12 years. 6 years as boyfriend and girlfriend, and then 6 years married. He went away to school and came back. He adored my son, my oldest son, adored him, treated him as if he were his own. But he decided to go away to school when we were probably our third year in, second or third year in, something like that. He decided to go away to school because by the time he and I got together, By the time he decided to go away to school, I think my son at that point was like two or three. But anyway, so he decided to go away to school. Like I said, he came back home during winter break. I got pregnant with our son together, our first son together. And he went away to school. I didn't realize I was pregnant until, of course, after the fact. And when I told him, he didn't believe it. He was shocked because unbeknownst to me, and I can't say unbeknownst to me, I had an inkling, but I allowed myself to be fooled into thinking that it wasn't so. So I had an inkling that he was actually seeing someone else while he was away, and he denied it, but I knew better. And I wanted it to be known that I knew that this other person existed, even though he said they were just friends, they were just homies, they were just hanging out with one another. Yeah, they were roommates because she had a house and they were, she needed, one roommate had left and she needed somebody to help, so he, rented a room, blah, blah, blah. So I made it known that I knew she existed, and I did something that was extremely juvenile, displayed nothing but jealousy, and I didn't care in the moment. So, and I wasn't even a huge proponent of this. I was not a huge advocate of this. As a matter of fact, I thought it was like a person marking their person, like a dog marks a bush. I put hickeys on him, and I put hickeys on him to the point, because I don't know what he had told this person. I don't know what he told that girl. I don't know if he accepted that I was no longer in the picture. I don't know what he told her. However, when he figured out what I was doing to him, by the time he figured it out, it was too late. So he was upset, but then it was like, whatever. But I put hickeys in the form of a J on his back, so that she would have no choice but to realize that in order for me to do that, that means that he had to be undressed for that to happen. Do I regret it? Absolutely not. Not in the least. Don't regret it at all. Because I wanted to make it known that I knew she existed, and that I was still in the picture despite what he was telling her. I wanted it to be known. So that was the beginning of me knowing that it wasn't going to work, even though I believed that it was supposed to work. Yeah, I was stupid, but we all were at some point in our lives, right? So he goes back to school. I find out that I'm pregnant. I let him know. He didn't want me to tell anybody, especially anyone on his side, because it would devastate them, and he wanted to be the ones to tell them. Well, that was yet a second clue that it wasn't going to work. But I agreed to it. I agreed to it for a time. When he came back home for the summer, I said, look, you need to let your people know that this is what it is. No, actually, he came back home for spring break, and that's when he proposed to me. And he didn't want me to let people know that we were engaged. And I was like, that's so stupid. Why? We're having a baby, and now you don't want people to know that we're engaged? I don't understand. But he was so caught up in what others would think if they knew. Never mind the fact that none of these people that he ever considered highly were perfection themselves. None of them were. And it's not like they didn't know anything about this kind of thing. They knew. But he didn't want to be seen as the one that had messed up his life and had lost control and this, that, and the other. So, where's my phone? Oh. So, I kept the engagement quiet. By this point, everyone knew that I was pregnant. But I kept the engagement quiet for a little bit. And then But I gave him an ultimatum. I told him that if they did not know by the time he came home for the summer, I was going to make it clear to everyone that we were not only having a baby, but we were also engaged and planning to get married. So that was the third thing that told me that it wasn't going to work. The first was the fact that I knew he was dating someone else while he was away at school. The second was the fact that he wanted me to keep the pregnancy quiet. And then the third was the fact that he wanted me to keep the engagement quiet. I knew it wasn't going to work, but I went forward anyway. I was in love. That's what I was. I was in love. Or in stupid, whichever you want to call it. Take your pick. Doesn't matter. So that marriage finally happened. 1 kid and 6 years later, it finally happened. And we were married for a total of 6 years. During that marriage, not only had he cheated on me multiple times, but he was also a drug addict. And he was also horrible with money. Not a bad person. Great heart. Great heart. And wanted to be there. Because I knew him in high school, so I knew that he was a good person. I knew that he had a great heart. I knew that it wasn't like him to mistreat people. I knew that. So I was able to overlook the infidelities. I was able to overlook the fact that he wanted to keep some things quiet. I was able to overlook a lot of stuff, but at what detriment to myself, what detriment to myself. So he was horrible with money. When we finally got married, we basically went through the cash that we had been given for our wedding as gifts, because I'd already had the apartment. We'd already had children. The apartment was fully furnished. I got the apartment before we married, but he didn't want to move in because he didn't want us to be shacking, which I was like, okay, fine, cool. It's not like we haven't made babies already. It's not like we haven't had sex already. It's not like we're not already engaged. But okay, you don't want to shack? Fine, don't shack. It's cool with me. But when we married, we had a place to live. I had already, again, established a home for us when we married. But we went through that money because we were in debt, because he was horrible with money and could not hold a job. So that was, 5 and 6? Horrible. No, 5, 6, 7. Didn't want to move in before we got married. Horrible with money. Could not hold a job. So, no. 4, 5, 6. Those were, at least at that point, 6 reasons why I knew that this marriage wasn't going to work. When we got married, he was a full-blown addict. Full-blown. A full-blown crack addict. And I knew it. It had not been verbalized, but I recognized the signs. I knew what was going on. It was really very clear. Let me give you another sign that I knew this wasn't going to work, but I tried anyway. He was over an hour late for our wedding. He and his best man, who was his best friend, were over an hour late for our wedding. Why? Because they were getting high. They were getting high. Now, mind you, we did not have our wedding in the church, which is where I really wanted the wedding to be. We didn't have the wedding in the church. We had the wedding in the bishop's office. And why did we have the wedding in the bishop's office? Because the bishop was his grandfather and he wanted his grandfather to marry us. But the bishop did not agree with the fact that we had children already. So he did not want to marry us in the sanctuary. One more clue to the fact that this wasn't going to work. So we prepare for the day. I do everything that I was supposed to do. I got the dress, we got everything set up, the cake, family helped me out. There was only so much that my family could do. They could not financially throw money at it. So we paid for a good portion of the things that we did had for our wedding, including the parking, because the street that we lived on, there wasn't an abundant amount of parking. So we rented out the parking lot of the church that was down the street from us, so that people that came to the reception that we had in the backyard of my grandparents' 2-flat that I had moved out of in order to be on my own, all of the attendees parked in the lot and then walked down to the house. But he and the best man were over an hour late to the actual wedding that we had in the bishop's office, because the bishop would not marry us in the sanctuary because we already had children out of wedlock. And he was a full-blown crack addict. So, infidelity, lies, bad with money, could not hold a job, was a crack addict, those were all signs that made it very clear that that marriage was not going to work. And then when he finally cleaned himself up, and the stories that I would get, oh my God, the stories that I would get as to why he would go missing, as to why he didn't have certain pieces of jewelry anymore, the stories that I would get were bestseller worthy. Bestseller worthy. It's like, wow, this dude can tell a story. He can tell a story. And he did eventually become like the man that he did not want to become, which was his father. He did not want to become like his father, but he did eventually become his father, spitting image of making the same mistakes, the addiction, the infidelity, the absence from the lives of his children. He became that person, the making everyone more important than the things that are supposed to be important, meaning your children, your family. He became that person. So when he finally cleaned himself up and he was no longer using drugs, I thought that we were well on the road to healing. That, okay, now we can get the money together, we can get our credit together, that we can buy a house. We had started looking for a house. I was all for it. He wanted to live in the suburbs. I didn't really want to live in the suburbs just then. I was not okay with living in the suburbs. I didn't want to pull the kids out of their schools. I didn't want to pull them away from my family. Even though, cars, hello. But I didn't want to do that. So initially I was not for moving into the suburbs of Chicago. I wanted to stay in the city where everything was convenient. But then he started making even more stupid mistakes. He was buying cars that he could not afford and were not family friendly. Like he bought, was it a Corvette? He bought a little 2-seater that had a back seat, but it wasn't big enough for an actual car seat. It wasn't big enough for an actual person to be back there. He had to return it and get something more reasonable, because once they finally ran his credit, they figured out he couldn't afford to pay for it. So he had to take it back and get something much more reasonable, which ended up being, I think that's when he got the truck. The truck or the van, one or the other. But I was like, okay, this makes much more sense because, hello, we got people. We got little people. And at this point, we had three. Little people. But we needed a new car. We needed a second car because he was working, I was working. He was finally able to hold on to a job. And, you know, he needed to be able to get back and forth to work in a reliable vehicle. So found something that we could fit all of us in. It was when he got the truck. Found something that he can fit all of us in. And then I found out that he was still cheating. I would find telephone numbers, pictures, messages, all of these things that let me know that he was still not taking this relationship seriously, still not taking this marriage seriously, still didn't want this marriage. I did something else that I tell people not to do, that I tell women not to do, because when you go looking for stuff, you will find it. It will eventually show up on your doorstep. It will eventually show up. I became a private investigator. And my father is so funny because he tells me all the time, you know, I'm a certified private investigator. I can dig up some, I know Dad. And I got that trait from him because he's an investigator, so am I. I am the one that likes to dig to get the information. That's why it takes me so long sometimes to get some things done, because I want to get to the bottom of it, the root of it, before I can say, okay, this is what it is. That's why I do what I do as far as a coach is concerned. That's why I use CBT, cognitive behavioral therapy, because it gets you to the root of why a thing happens. I am an investigator. I need to know why, how, when. I need all of those details. So I did that as his wife, and I found stuff, and I was like, wow, here I am taking care of our children. Here I am taking care of our home. Here I am taking care of you. And you're still cheating. I found hotel receipts. I found receipts for lingerie. I found receipts for flowers. I even tracked him down to the hotel. I found, pictures, bank statements, credit card statements. I found it all. And one thing that he did that he did not realize he did, even after I confronted him with it, he was at a strip club one night, and he called me accidentally from that strip club. He butt dialed me and did not realize that he had done that. And this was before phones knew to disconnect after a certain amount of time. So he left me a very long voicemail, not realizing that he had, talking about his adventure with one of the strippers in the back room. And I kept the recording for a long time. It eventually erased from my phone. It automatically erased from my phone. And it had tried to do it a couple of times, and I would save it. But I guess this final time, it didn't even give me the option of saving it any longer. And I didn't know how to get it off of the phone and send it somewhere else at that point. So anyway, he left me this long voicemail of him having a conversation with one of his homeboys about what he had done with the stripper in the back room. So I confront him with this, and he's like, no, it wasn't me. I don't know who it was, but it wasn't me. Like, I don't know his voice. No, it wasn't me. Okay, cool. So I played the recording for him. And he still says, like Shaggy, wasn't me. Seriously. I busted you, wasn't me. I hear your voice, wasn't me. I know your voice, wasn't me. It's on the recording and I'm playing it for you, wasn't me. Okay. So, I look past all of that. I look at him having relationships with females. They're friends, but I don't know them. Introduce us. I'm your wife. Introduce your friend to me. If you all are just friends, introduce your friend to me. I don't have any male friends, and the male friends I do have, or would even consider, hey, this is my husband. introduce your female friends to me. So things were happening. He's having these conversations with female friends, and one of the female friends ends up getting pregnant by some dude, and she wants an abortion, and then he's supposed to take her to get this abortion. Why are you taking her? Why is the guy that knocked her up not taking her? Make that make sense for me. It was just a bunch of stuff. It was a bunch of stuff. And eventually my health began to fail because of it. Eventually it got to a point, and I tried. I really tried, even to the point of me saying, look, I will move to the suburbs if that's what you want to do. Let's just work this out. And it did not work at all. My battery's about to die, so I'm going to end this really quickly. I became ill, began losing weight, began losing my hair. And this is after I had gained a ton of weight. And then I just started losing it all of a sudden and losing my hair. And I finally said, I cannot take care of you anymore and your shenanigans. I got to take care of me. So I had my best friend at the time and her husband come move all of my things out of the apartment and move them upstairs to the second floor. That's the apartment that I took over, and my brother went downstairs to the basement. I called my ex-husband and said, hey, come get your stuff before my brother sells it. And that's how that went. Now, the relationship deteriorated even more afterwards, and I'll talk about that maybe a little bit later. But right now, because this battery is about to die on me, I'm going to end this right here and maybe eventually get back to that later on. So, with that, I'll see you in the next episode.